As a disclaimer for this video, it is part 2 of 2 and heavily collects the statements made by Digital Extremes that were left out of part 1 for time. Part 2, just like part 1, focuses on the community's reception to Nora Night, the Wolf of Saturn 6 as a boss, the connected story, and everything else that could not fit in part 1. This video heavily collects comments and posts made from the community about the aforementioned topics to provide you with information about and insight into the reception of Nightwave Series 1 during the time. Lastly, I will be reading them straight to you without any alteration for historical purposes, so without further ado, let us begin. To begin, the following is a clip that I left out from part 1 due to time, and that is DE commenting on Nightwave Series 1 on the 3rd of May, near the end of Season 1. They also talk about the Wolf of Satin 6 in this clip, and then we will continue with a video with comments and posts made prior to and then after this clip.
From Series 2, so Series 2 is going to be a different story. Series 2 is going to be a lot less grindy.
Yes.
Series 2 is going to have a lot less fear of missing out. We want to kind of take our foot off the gas for how Series 1 turned out. We didn't do that mid-Series 1 because, as you know, we launched simultaneous on all of our Warframe platforms. So that really limited our ability to do a lot of in-flight fixes, although we did a few here and there. That's the kind of, the general thrust is to reduce the endless mission grind, to reduce the forced multiplayer stuff that a lot of people didn't like. And
there's a few different types of challenges.
So basically,
there's a lot of different challenges, and we've been trying to listen to all your feedback and really appreciate it. And I think if I had to rank what I heard as negatives was, this is too much pressure and making me feel burned out. That these mission types, or that's too many bounties, or that's too long for an endless mission. This cred amounts maybe not enough for how much time I have to put into it. And also then the length of some of the challenges that I think were really difficult for people. Don't even take as much time.
And then another pretty major thing is the way lore and time-limited nature of the wolf is handled. So a lot of people have wolf anxiety because they don't know if he's gone for good after Series 1.
Gone for good.
The answer is no.
He's not gone for good. He's just more rare, and I think our plan has always been to have kind of a big sort of finish with him, so that there's a high degree of availability at the end of the event.
Yes, and I believe there is even a plan to incorporate the wolf as a on-demand threat in Series 2 using some evergreen rewards as well, if I'm not mistaken. Is that?
I've heard that as well. Anyways, he'll be around more.
He'll be around more. Okay. Catch-up phase?
So you can play what you missed.
Once you finished a week.
If you have a bunch of weeklies and perhaps you're joining at the midpoint, if you clear the current ones, it'll actually show you past ones. And so some of that feedback was, I only get to play Warframe on the weekend, or I had a vacation, or life happened, and I still want to participate. That's that. I think we still intend to have the participants or the enemies or whatever happens in Series 2 still have some harder difficulty things and that sort of thing. We don't want to necessarily make all elite challenges be super easy. So I don't think it's fair to say that casuals ruined Nightwave. That's not our intent at all. We just want to take our foot off the gas there in terms of how intense a grind it is. Our intention is we're not monetizing it. There's not any kind of pressure there for us. We don't have any ulterior motives. We're just trying to give you some direction to your play if maybe you've maxed out some things or you're not sure what you want to play that day or that weekend. So those are our intentions, and that's why we've kind of made these changes.
With that out of the way, we go back and focus on the character of Nora Night. In the beginning of Nightwave Series 1, Nora Night's transmissions were extremely frequent, and many players did voice their feedback about the frequency. DE did reduce their frequency though over the course of the series within Hotfix 24.3.1 on the 28th of February and update 24.5 on the 15th of March. On the 21st of March in Hotfix 24.5.4, DE also allowed players to disable common Nora Night transmissions by introducing an Enable Hint Transmission setting in the audio tab of the game's options. One of the posts that highlighted frustration with Nora Night's dialogue was the following Reddit post and a number of its replies. The Reddit post was titled, Nora Nightwave is fast becoming the Tess Everis NPC dialogue torture of Warframe. That read, No Nora, I'm not being true to myself by mining and fishing in content that I had no intention of touching until I needed some new arcanes or a new amp made. Nor am I the badass for opening a bunch of lockers. Shut up, please, dear God, just shut up. I'm not going to feel better about the time I wasted completing this menial, mind-numbing task, no matter how much gas-scripted dialogue you ram up my backside. The person later edited their post, saying, "Before any respondent tells me I don't have to do Nightwave content if I dislike her that much, Umbral Forma says otherwise. Until DE tells us by what other methods it can be obtained and whether those methods are any less time abusive, I'm stuck grinding Nightwave favor to ensure my top-end content builds remain top-end. Remember, once something like Umbral Forma has gone in, DE will have to allow for it when considering future difficulty and balance. And I prefer being able to solo things like Profit Taker with the game's experience so heavily affected by a poor host connection and machine." Which, let's face it, is exactly why Umbra Forma is where it is in the reward chain. So it kind of slightly goes back into the post in part 1. Most players' opinions about Nora Night was in regards to her dialogue and the excessive transmissions that I said beforehand, as she would often give you the line about being a once and future badass for doing small tasks that didn't really matter, as basically stated in the previous post. One player suggested that her lines could be rearranged and tied to act tiers from Dreamers and Let's Check What's Next on dailies to Once and Future Badass being tied to Elite weeklies. A number of players agreed in response to this, saying that would be so much better. Being called the Once and Future Badass for opening lockers was just so jarring. Tenno, steal some Corpus guy's lunch money from a locker. Nora, the Once and Future Badass. Another sharing their opinion, honestly, the Once and Future Badass line is fucking cringe. Another, I definitely agree with this. It sounds much more appropriate. Another saying, it's funny. I never understood why people hate Ordis. I still, well, not enjoy his dialogue, but I don't mind it. But I'm already sick of Nightwave's lines. They are not appropriate, they are not satisfying, they are disruptive, please make it stop. Someone going a bit further. Ordis is simply way more to the point than any other mission control. You can see it during the Railjack trailer. He says what's up, but doesn't drag that information for too long. He simply says, intruders aboard. While if it was the Lotus, I feel it would be something like, Tenno, an intrusion has been detected on the ship. You must take care of the invaders before they sabotage our mission. And Nora is kinda similar with having way too long lines. It's fine for the radio itself, but not for popping in during the mission. Another saying, I was the badass for deploying a glyph. Eye roll. And lastly, I think she was alright when she would sometimes play in the trailer, but because of how Nightwave ties to the game, I feel like Nora is now everywhere. You can't have a mysterious character and have them always be in your face at the same time. Anyway, moving away from Nora Night's dialogue, we go into the main focus of Nightwave Series 1, which was the Wolf of Saturn 6 as an assassin enemy, as well as his fugitives. Now both the Wolf and his fugitives would have a chance to spawn in your mission, with the exception of the Wolf when you were playing in any mission that wasn't a standard star chart level, so open world, sanctuary onslaught, and so on. But the fugitives, on the other hand, would spawn anywhere and spawn in a pack of 3. They would act exactly like capture targets, so players would have to down and interact with their bodies. Each of the fugitives rewarded 50 season standing by default for a total of 150 standing. This was affected by boosters, as well as when Nightwave was introduced, it was affected by the Orb Valus affinity multiplier that was occurring at that time that increased the standing players were given. On top of that, it wasn't odd to see the fugitives spawn every couple of missions or multiple times within one mission, as unlike the Wolf of Saturn 6, they were a source of standing when players had completed their acts for the week. The fugitives would also spawn alongside the Wolf, but would remain invincible until the players had killed him. But it should also be noted that the system with the fugitives providing standing for players was not free from abuse and exploits, as reported in Hotfix 24.5.7 on the 29th of March, where DE said they fixed the ability to repeatably collect convict standing by host migrating and rejoining the previous squad, of which they found a handful of obvious exploiters and that DE would be acting accordingly. With the information about the fugitives out of the way, we go to the Wolf. Now he was a lot rarer than the fugitives, especially at the beginning of Nightwave. Some players shared their experiences fighting with the wolf, while others shared their experiences of nothing. Most players that fought him shared the same opinion though, of him being extremely tanky beyond reason, with some saying they fought him for more than 30 minutes. More on that later. After player feedback over the course of the series, his health and tankiness would be reduced, while his spawn chance was increased as the season went on, which was something DE had actually expressed via developer workshops and Twitter. But this was only done once through an official announcement. His health and tankiness reduction came alongside a number of hotfixes, and that spawn chance increase was via a forum post. To go deeper, alongside the health reduction, DE also changed the way assassin-based enemies function. In 24.5.5 on the 26th of March, DE made it so assassins now scale levels based on player count rather than the weapon's level of the targeted player. And they also slightly reduced the health of the wolf, while also slightly increasing his damage output. In 24.6, on the 5th of April, DE gave a level cap to the assassin enemies of 60 for solo players and 75 for public squads, while also once again reducing the tankiness of the wolf. While we are on this specific update, it had also introduced the ability for players to view and choose between each of the cutscenes that were played throughout the season that conveyed the story. They had also buffed the Wolf Sledge weapon stats for players that had acquired it from the wolf by this point. This buff added a 5 meter 200 explosion damage radial attack upon recalling the weapon, an increase to its range that set it to 1.5 meters, melee damage went up to 130, the throwing projectile range was increased to 650, they increased the speed of its throwing animations, and they made a reduction in collision width to the thrown projectile down to 0.2 meters. Now, as we do return to the spawn rate increase that I was going on about, it had been announced in a post titled Nightwave Changes, Wolf Spawns and Feedback on the 17th of April that the spawn rate for the wolf had been increased to 4%, and if missions were above level 20, the spawn rate would be increased to 6%. In this post, they also announced that the earliest end date for the season would be at the earliest, the 15th of May. Now, DE did later update players on the 14th of May that the absolute end date was on the 19th of May at 8 PM Eastern Time, only 4 days after their initial estimated date. When it came to the announcement of those changes, there were a number of player responses. They do of course follow. With a forum post user saying, "Thank you for being transparent about this. I just have one question. What was the chance before? He has a cosmetic drop with a 2% drop chance. Even with 6%, that is still a 0.12% chance at a mask. That's 3,835 missions just for statistical probability to reach 99%. 577 runs to be 50%. But wait, it gets better. If we assume you do a given mission for 280 seconds and maximize each spawn chance perfectly, you would spend approximately 1,073,800 seconds for a 99% chance, or 298 hours and 16 minutes, and 161,560 seconds for a 50% chance, or 44 hours and 52 minutes, respectively in normal missions. Now, Shadow Stalker has some bad drops, but only the Smoking Body ephemera is non-purchasable. Additionally, he has beacons. If we assume you do not use a beacon, his spawn chance is 3.5% in a full squad. This is worse than the Wolf of Saturn 6. However, the ephemera has a 5% drop chance, making the total drop chance 1.175%. This is higher than the Saturn 6 mask, and did not even include the fact you can make Stalker spawn 100% of the time if you invest some ducats and credits. I was looking at some cosmetic drops, and this gets even spicier. Let's take a look at the Blazing Step ephemera that has a 1.01% chance to drop every 22 minutes at rotation C of Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. I'm going to spare the words. This is 171 hours of Elite Sanctuary Onslaught for a 99% chance at Blazing Step ephemera. If you notice, that time is around 57% of the time it will take to likely net you a Saturn 6 mask from normal missions. I'm not just sitting here to complain. I play an unhealthy amount and will get the Saturn 6 mask eventually. I'm just showing what the math checks out to and what this represents for time investment. I know the route this game is taking in terms of item acquisition and an operator cosmetic having this drop chance should be addressed sooner rather than later. Making it easier in months and years shouldn't need to take place like other items if the drop chance is low but manageable now. Unfortunately, any Syndicate, Assassin, Arcwing, Free Roam, Arena, Quest, Sanctuary Onslaught, Relay, Dojo, or similar mission will not allow you the chance to spawn this enemy. It would be cool if that was looked at as well, but I can see the argument on either side. Some players would love to see him in everything they're doing, and others would want him out of their mining adventures and similar prospects. Hopefully, the Wolf of Satin 6 keeps seeing improvement, much like many parts of Nightwave that DE Bear posted in the past, and the continued work from feedback as shown on Devstreams. Thank you for Nightwave and this new boss. I for one really enjoy this encounter when he decides to show up. Another user saying, the Wolf makes me play using low-level gear many times less than I used to. You'll never know when the Wolf will show up and utterly squash you. There should be a system like the Kuva Siphons that makes the Wolf only appear on one planet at a time. With the Nightwave system gutting most of the alert menu, a Wolf sightings on X type mission would fit in nicely. It would let low-level players play most missions without the chance of Wolf and his invincible enemies destroying them and any objectives within moments. If they need to play on the planet he's on, they can either wait, mod their gear accordingly, or at the very least know they need to be cautious. Another quoting the original post saying the Wolf of Saturn 6 is one that does the hunting. The person said, "It is wrong because Warframe is not hardcore survival horror game. It is more about massive slaughter and picking up stuff that dropped from slaughtered things. Players have to get the Sledge from the Wolf, or they will be missing 3k mastery. DE should try to look at the game from the player's side from time to time." Another post, similar to the one previously mentioned, could we please get some clarification on how assassin spawns work in general? It feels really unclear how this role is made when there's also the Stalker, Grustag 3 and Zanuka, Syndicates, and then squad member conditions to account for. Are you saying there is an overall 4 and 6% chance for the Wolf to spawn? Or are you saying that out of the whatever percent chance of any assassin spawn, the Wolf has a 4 to 6% chance to spawn? What is the X percentage for general assassin spawns? It's not possible for multiple assassins to spawn in the same mission, right? There's a very distinct lack of information, and anyone who could pull the data would be ill-advised to share it because these calculations are made server-side, if I recall correctly, and that very much steps out of the grey area data mining on client-side files is at. And lastly, in regards to this post, someone said, quoting the previously mentioned post that said, "The Wolf makes me play using low-level gear many times less than I used to. You'll never know when the Wolf shows up and utterly squash you." With the new poster saying, "This is my problem with him currently. You have to treat every eligible mission as if it's going to be a Wolf fight, because every time I'd encountered him while leveling weapons and frames, the fight took 20 to 30 minutes and a crap ton of ammo restores. He's not a fun fight if you don't have the right gear with you, and I don't understand the reasoning behind the design. A randomly spawning boss that requires specific gear to kill efficiently. Normally, even when I disagree with something D has done, I at least understand their reasoning. This boss design has left me baffled." Back to the main topic, I think what other people have said is worth looking into. Make him more like the Acolyte spawns or Kuva missions. That way people who want him can hunt for him, and people who really don't want to be bothered right now have a way of opting out. The next point to note about the season was the story. Alongside the Axe, Storefront, Fugitives, there was a story. It had been revealed with the following cutscene as the stepping stone to uncovering the Wolf's journey throughout the season. I'll play that for you now.
It's a bad moon, dreamers. Can you feel it? From my perch at Nightwave, I listen at the windows of the wealthy and well-to-do. Ever heard of Saturn 6? News to me, too. Turns out the Grenier have a max pin floating some 6 leagues deep in the gas. No one knew about it, 'cause no one ever busted out. Until now, right? Some Grenier meathead they started calling the Wolf, on account of him taking up howling at night. Decrypts say he was a model prisoner, doing the time. Fabbing bombs with the rest of his Khan brothers. Apple of the warden's eye, even. But something cracked, and now he's out there on the loose. The so-called Wolf of Saturn Six.
Now, after that cutscene, DE would release a new cinematic every couple of weeks, and that would play upon opening the Nightwave menu when the cutscene released. It's important to note that from the beginning of the Wolf's appearance, his only unique drop would be the parts for his signature weapon, the Wolf Sledge. The weapon has a unique function where upon using a fully charged attack, it will be sent out of the player's hands towards where the cursor was pointed. If it ends up hitting an object or an enemy, it will be returned to the player, and the player also has the option to explode the hammer mid-air upon pressing the melee attack. It will be returned to the player's hands after this has occurred. In order to build the weapon, players had to acquire its blueprint, motor, head, and handle, and once they had that, they needed 519 extract and 30,000 credits to start building it in the foundry. Initially, and as of recording this video, the Wolf Sledge cannot be purchased from the in-game market, and thus you have to farm for it if you want it. But in Hotfix 24.7.1, which was the release of episode 3 for the story, it was revealed that he now had a sentient bit of technology attached to his head via Alid V, and that he had evolved into the sentient Wolf of Saturn 6. So from that point onward, on the 12th of April, players would only verse the sentient Wolf of Saturn 6, and no longer the normal variant. This sentient Wolf of Satin 6 had one extra item added to his drop table, and that was the Wolf of Satin 6 mask for your operator. Once again, more on that later. But for the rest of the cutscenes, I will play them for you now. So episode 2, all the way to the last episode, which was episode 5.
It's late. You still with me, dreamers? Soon we'll see the sun curve over the Venusian sky. A hot blue taste. What's keeping you up? For me, it's the gap waves, all abuzz with the doings of a certain big, bad wolf. Why didn't he run? Why didn't he hit that solar rail as far as it would take him? Instead, he's stalking those soul-bare money huggers round Jupiter. My birds are saying the corpus net got flipped. A system-wide message from the wolf. Deliver Garn. Where'd a meathead learn a trick like that? And who's Garn? Baby, you can guess. He's the warden of Saturn Six. A big man, too well-dressed for his station, too well-fed for his rank. And he's in the solar wind, too. Think he knows how the wolf came to howling? An ice night in Neptune, dreamers. Hold yours close and true. And hey, if you're between stops, Nora knows that mood. But our wolf, he's not alone tonight. Add this with me. The howler breaks out of Saturn 6. But get this, the howling doesn't stop. Someone else takes to singing that cruel song. The wolf knows why, and it called him back to the scene of the crime. Warden Garn's little side business. Selling Grenier lemons for a corpus squeeze. So freedom's got no hold on the wolf, does it? No. It's the sisters and brothers from the joint that matter to him. The pack. We both know what happens next. When a wolf finds its pack, they hunt. The message read, Garn is yours. An anonymous gift. I know what this looks like. But the wolf's too cold for revenge. The Grenier appoint wardens for life. The wolf had no choice but to shorten the term. Not payback. Just never again. But it was too easy. Days like these, an easy meal means you're taking someone's bait. Alid V's, the devil in a corpus cloak. Got the wolf in an all-new prison, baby. Only this one's not made of bars. It's made of chemicals. Guess we all know someone like that. The whole lot has been transformed into these amalgam dogs. His words. Hybridized. Juiced on some sentient strain. No nice way to put it. I think the pack is coming after you, dreamers. Passing by that Mercury Junction, shimmering hot tonight. Word on the grid is the devil's got his due. Should have known. We saw the signs, didn't we? Sure, the wolf got tough. Tougher. But more than that, the wolf got smart. Got a pack together. Worked the corpus crypto. He's his own man now. Leaving no more tracks. Is this the end? Dreamers? I hope so. But if I were you, I'd keep an ear out. 'Cause one of these days, you just might hear that howl come round your shoulder. This is Nora Night, signing off. Stay deadly, dreamers.
Now, with the final cutscene played, there was no continuation, but I do feel it is important to note that the Gas City remaster that we have now in-game was yet to be released at the time. It was still in development, and the cutscene did come out. I honestly felt like it was a bit awkward, off, and it didn't really have an impact. But to continue with the cutscenes and story out of the way, we return back to the Wolf of Saturn 6 as an enemy, and as mentioned beforehand, the wolf was initially very rare. He did continue to be even after his final spawn chance increase, which I mentioned beforehand, but for many players, that increase was enough, and they could experience him firsthand. The following is a collection of comments from the players about their experiences with the fight, and the first is coming under the thread title, Potentially Unpopular Opinion, the wolf is a poorly designed boss that is a pain to fight. To note, this thread was made on the 2nd of April, and it read, I very well might be wolf sledging a dead horse here, but I need to vent. I really hate the Wolf of Satin 6. He right now feels to me to be a waste of a great character design. I love the thought of a new Stalker type boss that invades you. The Stalker dies if I breathe on him at this point. So I initially welcomed some challenge. This ain't it, Chief. By challenge, I did not mean 2000 plus armor, bullet sponge mechanics so bad that my fights lasted over 30 minutes, and complete immunity to some of the best Warframe DPS abilities. I mean, why on earth did DE make him untargetable by Mace's Peacemakers? Really? I've killed the wolf a staggering 3 times now, and I've encountered him 1 or 2 times more. Each time, the dicks seemed to invade only when I had mostly underleveled gear. In fact, I am only writing this because I just rage aborted a mission where he invaded me while I had 2 unranked weapons and 1 at level 10. Yeah, not happening, Wolfmaster. The first time I encountered the wolf was the only time I ever had all maxed gear. I managed to kill him and got diddly squat. I don't even remember what it was so bad. It also took me upwards of 30 minutes just shooting, half an hour of the pew-pew, for nothing that was worth the time. He is just too tanky, period. I would run a heavy radiation build, except there is no way to get him to spawn on your terms. You can't draw him out, so you can't reasonably prepare for him. The Stalker works before you can kill him by fighting in his general direction, because he was tough but doable. The wolf is just a wall of health with no possibility for strategy. The fight is just dodge, shoot, repeat, and I hate it. I will acknowledge one thing right away. I mostly play alone. I understand that Woofy Boy is probably meant for more than one, so I am willing to forgive some issues I have for that. That being said, I have soloed 100% of the rest of what I have played before. Not one of them felt like a huge drag. I soloed 2 of the 3 Eidolons. I soloed the Orb Mother. Why the hell can I solo the wolf in under half an hour? Given that, I don't know, he actually showed up when I had gear that had a chance. Just a bit of a vent post here. I do think the wolf is flawed and needs to change if his presence will be ongoing in Nightwave. I don't want to get rid of him, but there needs to be a balance in between mindlessly shooting a roaring brick for 45 minutes and flicking your pinky to kill the boss. There has to be an in-between. The next thread was titled, "Spent 50 minutes fighting the wolf and only got a molten impact," and this post only contained a photo of the experience, where it included the player chat, reward, mission time, and ammo count during the experience, as you can see on screen. Continuing on, there was the thread on the 11th of April, titled, "The Wolf of Saturn 6 storytelling doesn't work if spawns are that rare." It read, "There is a new cinematic by Nora Night telling us that the wolf now has a sentient machine attached to his head by Alad V. Great for him, I guess, but me and many others did not encounter him once before his change, and it will probably take many more hours of playing until we see him eventually. That's like seeing the Shadow Stalker for the first time in the second dream without meeting the original Stalker. Wolf of Saturn 6 is a whole side story dedicated to a character that many players did not even see once in their playtime. Is he supposed to be a threat to Atenno? Is he supposed to be a mini-boss? Is he just another RNG mob that drops one part with a minimal percentage chance? Outside of the cinematics by Nora Night, there is no information about his character. I never encountered him, so I don't know if Nora tells you some additional lore when you defeat the wolf. If that would be the case, that's even worse because no encounter equals no information about a character that could have an actual interesting story. In reply to this post, a player said, "He's just another assassin like the Stalker, but he is as tanky as a Fomorian, and about 60% of the time all he drops is melee elemental mods, the non-status ones. Oh, and he comes with 3 of his buddies, but they're indestructible until he dies. They can be CC'd and hit like a truck, so if you're trying to protect something, you're shit out of luck." Another post saying, "I've had 13 spawns since launch. 3 where I died, 2 were after completing the mission and of a capture run during relic reward selection, and I got 1 handle and nothing more. Honestly, I'm not very optimistic about getting the hammer without spending a few hundred plat. Even the Stalker seems to be more common than the wolf. Just more tedious, unreliable RNG." And in response to that, a player shared his bad RNG with, "I've seen him once, and I've completed every single Nightwave challenge." Our next thread was titled, "Nightwave. The Wolf of Saturn 6 spawning and general system is one of the worst things I've seen implemented in Warframe," and that was posted on the 16th of April. It said, "This is just something I wanted to get off my chest, and most likely going to forget about this afterwards. I know there has been a lot of complaints about the wolf himself, a lot of them I agree with. I was hesitant when I heard that he would spawn more and more as the weeks went on, but I wanted to see if it would actually happen. Unfortunately, this ended up being, it's raining in the derelict scenarios." A reference to the HEMA situation, by the way, little editor's note. If you need to know context on that, watch the HEMA Warframe history video. But to continue with the post, "My problem with the Nightwave field boss, more specifically in the case, the wolf, is that the concept sounds cool, but the execution was done poorly. You have everything set up great, a cool host that expands on the lore of Warframe, fleshing out the world, but since you added a story, where's the antagonist? It's like playing Skyrim with no dragons ever showing in the main quest, despite them being a part of the plot. I haven't encountered the wolf for over a month until yesterday, and after 8 minutes of shooting, you know what he dropped? A molten impact. But never mind my personal frustrations, let's talk about those who have in real life responsibilities like work and family. Even with these, going over 10 weeks without seeing the wolf and not having a chance to get his parts is simply inexcusable. Nightwave itself is flawed just like the wolf, as it rewards people who have and can devote hours upon hours playing Warframe, and even then it's not guaranteed. I want to wait till the next Nightwave before I can really critique it, but the only thing I have to ask is there needs to be a way for people to catch up before the 10 weeks is up. Perhaps letting the Nightwave challenges accumulate would be a start, because one of the best things about Warframe is that you aren't forced to play. You can jump in and play catch up anytime. Nightwave completely changes that, but I digress. The Wolf of Saturn 6 is one of the worst things I've seen implemented in Warframe. You removed alerts and somehow added a even worse system to replace it. A super ultra rare spawning bullet sponge boss with a diluted drop table that is time limited. Why? This boss, no matter how you do it, is clearly designed for players who aren't newbies. Before this Nightwave is over, Wolf of Saturn 6 needs a 100% guaranteed way to encounter him, and there needs to be a choice for those who may or may not want to fight him and future Nightwave bosses. This current system is really not working for Nightwave bosses, and they need their own system, most likely something similar to the Acolytes. So you can keep your drop tables, but at least we can actually fight them, and everyone can have a chance to get their parts, instead of leaving everything to layers and layers of RNG. He also added at the end, note, and it doesn't matter if the wolf is coming back, I'd rather not have more dilution when it comes to Nightwave bosses spawning. One player responded to this, saying, the wolf encounter fails one of the most fundamental aspects of Warframe, respecting the player's time and commitment. I don't have a problem with the wolf being rare, difficult to kill spawn, but I do have a problem with those aforementioned factors if he doesn't drop something of value for the time invested. DE needs to pick one. Either make the wolf frequent, weak to fight with diluted drop tables, or rare and difficult to fight with a guaranteed drop. Now the final post to highlight was a clip shared on the 20th of April with the title Wolf of Saturn 6 is a fun and rewarding boss encounter. While that's playing, there were of course a few responses to this video. The first was DE, significantly less tanky, slight increase to health. Everyone, are you fucking sure? Another response saying, he's just terrible. An entire event tied around him, and he just isn't interesting or fun to fight. He shows up and just howls. Doesn't have any dialogue, no reason to why he wants to fight you or what his beef is. Nora just says he's a bad boy, but you have to take her at a word, cause fuck's showing why he's so angry. Then, like a bad date, he just fucks right off and leaves you to wallow in your sadness and regret, making you question your choices in life. And with those two responses highlighted and the video finished, let's continue. Well, it's your fault for not having the optimal wolf build equipped at all times on the slim chance he spawns. The second post saying, I can melt him in 2 minutes, if I happen to be on the right frame, all the time, on the slim possibility that he shows up. So, almost never. He's a shit boss. He either shouldn't be a random assassin boss, or he should be changed. Frankly, I don't see any benefit at all to his existence. His lore is terrible and non-existent. He's a big bad wolf whose only challenge is staying awake long enough and hoping he actually drops something that you want. The only difficulty in his encounter is ads that are not him, that are infinitely stronger than him for literally no reason. I really don't understand how DE haven't done something about him yet. For a boss to be this ridiculous, you'd think he'd have a chance at dropping sortie reward shit, but he doesn't. You either get shit like Spinning Needle or Fever Strike, or you get a slim chance at getting a part for a mediocre melee weapon. He just exists to ruin the game for newer players and just annoys older players. It's garbage, and no one should be defending it. It doesn't matter if you can kill him in a minute or two with the right gear, because you shouldn't have to always have the right stuff on. Stuff like snipers only is a sortie restriction that you work around for one mission. That's fine because it's one mission. Wolf is like snipers only, except it's a handful of weapons and frames that it's not one mission, it's all of them. Otherwise you end up wasting a ton of time and the game gets tedious and annoying because this dumbass outhouse of a boss is showing up to bog everyone's fun down. Now pushing forward through this long collection of statements, we move on to the 11th of May, where DE also launched the Wolf of Satin 6 Showdown, alongside Hotfix 24.8.3, which I had mentioned earlier with a reduction to his tankiness. This showdown is what was hinted at within the Devstream 127 clip at the start of the video. The Wolf Hunt was a tactical alert that ran for 3 days up until the 13th of May at 2 PM Eastern Time. It had 2 stages. The first stage rewarded 10 Nitane and was a level 20 to 30 mission. The second stage rewarded a Veiled Rifle Riven mod and the usual tactical alert reward of a Stratus emblem, or an upgrade depending on if you had one already, with the second stage having a level of 50 to 75. Now the Wolf Hunt allowed players to constantly repeat these missions over and over and over again and guarantee the spawn of the Wolf of Satin 6 as he was the assassination target at the end of the level. Throughout both missions, you had a number of fugitives spawn as the main enemy. The second stage also had better chances of receiving loot from the wolf compared to the first lower level stage. This was also something DE had noted in the announcement post alongside the Nightwave rank restriction of tier 5. I'd also like to add that this event was very popular, and the improvement to his spawn rate through that aforementioned forum post improved access to the Wolf Sledge significantly. On my own Twitter, I had screen capped the Warframe market listing for the Wolf Sledge set on the 3rd of March. The listings on that screenshot was selling the full complete Wolf Sledge set for 1400 plat, with some reaching upwards of 4000 plat. I also later checked and documented the prices on the 20th of May, and the prices had dropped to a low of 60 platinum after this event. Now, even with the open access to the fight, the Wolf's drop chances and acquisition of his loot was still a grind. I believe at this point it is important to document the drop chance for his exclusive items at the time, which I've mentioned before, the Wolf Sledge and the Operator Mask. His blueprint and item drop pool had a drop rate of 35%. From there, his items within the category had the following drop rate. The Wolf Sledge handle and head were common with 38.7% drop chances, and the blueprint and motor were uncommon with 11.28% drop rate. The aforementioned Saturn 6 mask had its own category under sigils, and its drop chance was 2%. There was no other items in the sigil pool, so from there it was just guaranteed. Now with that information, let's highlight a few posts made from the event. The first being some fan art and images about the experience of running the event. The first post was from Papa_KN with the post titled Entering Wolf Hunt. The second was from Fiery Janie with the Wolf of Satin 6 Assassination First Impression. The third was from Blycord, the Wolf Event Starter Pack. And lastly, the Wolf Tactical Alert by Lag20. And to start finishing the video up, we have a few posts to highlight in regards to the event and the accessibility of the Wolf of Saturn 6 mask. But before I get into the post, it should be noted that the Wolf of Saturn 6 mask was not vacuumable, and it also had its own unique model. It also had its own drop separate to that of the Wolf Sledge part. It would also be floating in the sky, with the following post notifying players. Alright. While this might not sound too surprising to some of you, I still think this warrants a shout out or PSA because I actually missed my first mask after 95 runs, and I thought I could save some of you from the trouble of doing the same. There's two things to note. One, the mask drop table is completely independent from the Wolf Sledge drop table. Yes, you can get both, and getting a Wolf Sledge part does not mean he didn't drop the mask. Two, the mask does not get picked up by vacuum. Edit. For those wondering, the mask has the actual 3D model when it drops and not just a purple glowing drop like the Wolf Sledge parts. This might have contributed to me missing it the first time. Also, it's floating. Now our first post is in regards to the Saturn 6 mask. The title of the thread was, I've done the Wolf of Saturn 6 assassination mission 300 times and have not obtained his mask. Yeah, that's a lot. I think here's a screenshot of my 300th run. Here's a screenshot showing that I don't have the mask, and here's a screenshot of more or less all my hammer part drops. So yeah, as you can probably imagine, running the mission 300 times only to not get the reward you want, nor have any indication that you'll ever get it, feels pretty bad. I'm not here to shame DE for making the drop chances so low, nor am I here to beg for pity. Instead, I would like to hopefully spur some more discussion about kind of terrible drop rates. The problem I have isn't really that the drop rate is super low. No, the problem is that the drop rate is super low on an enemy that after this tactical alert is over, will be extremely hard to farm. Now I know what you're thinking, but the Stalker, Grustark 3, Zanuka's drops are really rare as well. And of course you'd be right. Farming for their weapons super sucks, as does trying to farm for scimitar parts. The difference though is that everything you can get from them, barring the Stalker's vape body, can be obtained from the market if you are that desperate. You may also be thinking, what about the ephemera from the exploiter? This is also an excellent point, as the ephemera has only a slightly higher drop rate than the mask. However, the exploiter, you're also getting large amounts of standing for both Vox Solaris and Vox United through the Torrid and resource drops. Thus, you don't walk away more or less empty-handed like you do with a wolf. Of course, you do usually get a hammer part from the higher level assassination, but there's a point where you get so many hammers that you probably aren't going to be able to sell them to actually get any benefit from them, while a consistent stream of resources for Fortuna gives you the opportunity to try out new kit gun combinations or grab any other goodies you want. Now, if you're a bit of a skeptic like myself, you've probably wondered about the math. At a static 2% drop rate after 300 runs just in this event, I should have a 99.966% chance to get a mask already. From here, we can come to two conclusions. One, I did get extremely unlucky and didn't have the mask drop once. Or, I did have the mask drop at some point, but didn't pick it up for some reason or another. Starting with point 1, there isn't really much to say. It's very possible that I just had actually the worst luck. Point 2, however, is where things get a bit frustrating. First off, the mask is not affected by vacuum. When you consider that, you're probably going to be bouncing around as much as possible to avoid the firebombs, or when the wolf himself decides to throw himself at a wall at warp speed. It's very possible that you could miss the pickup. Speaking of missing it, we have the pickup itself, an unassuming little mask just floating in the air. This is kind of absurd. It's small, it's a similar dull beige as the wall, and doesn't appear to have any kind of light beam to indicate that it's a drop. Honestly, it looks like a piece of debris bugged out, and it is just floating around. So that's all I have to whine about. What do I propose, you ask? Well, I think if we are going to have a lot of RNG on a limited time event, why not borrow a system from another game that's heavily based in RNG? Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links has a system for its events where one of the common random rewards you can get is a currency that you can use at a limited time shop to straight up purchase one of the card drops you want. The rarest cards take a lot of the currency, but no matter how bad your luck is, you are still really likely to be able to get at least one copy of the card if you put in the effort. I think a similar system would be excellent in Warframe. It's very similar to a system we already have, that being Vitus Essence and Arbitrations, and would relieve a lot of the stress of relying just on RNG itself. The system still has some issues, of course, but I do think it would be a good step in the right direction. That's all I've got to say, so what about all of you? Have your runs been good, bad? Do you think the current system could use a sort of safety net? Too long don't read, locking items behind a pseudo-limited time event and loads of RNG feels awful for the player. A few players' responses to that were, I got the mask before I got the Wolf Sledge blueprint, lol. I think it took me 30 runs to get everything. I guess the RNG gods are on my side once in a while. I didn't even want the mask. I was going to grind this out last night, did a few times and hated every second of it, so I stopped. I'm around 137 I think, and no mask. Even looked around after the kill and such. No mask drop existed for pickup. I don't even know why I wanted the mask so bad. I wasn't even going to use it. With another saying, as someone who hasn't gotten it, honestly I'm personally fine with having a small set of ultra rare items. They are only really for showing off your RNG. And I don't even think 2% is that unreasonable on a mission that can be run in less than 2 minutes. My condolences to the original poster, you got massively screwed by RNG, but if cases like yours didn't exist, the mask wouldn't be as desirable as a show-off item. Having the wolf be this easily accessible for a limited time only kind of rubs me the wrong way. Now it just becomes an equivalent to the smoke ephemera. But this is my first time hearing about what the actual drop looks like, and that's some grade A bullshit right there. If it actually can spawn further away from the wolf or doesn't get affected by vacuum, like some people are saying, that's actually awful. The second post was titled, Please no more drop chances below 5%. So today, after 120 runs versus the wolf, just for the mask, I gave up. Same with the ephemeras. They're just not worth it. This is the same feeling of burnout when I was farming for the latter when Bratton Vandal. The history repeats itself as always. There is no, quote, sense of accomplishment, end quote, just mere lack of frustration. Are we okay with this? What are your thoughts? Some of the responses to this post follow. Nah, sub 5% drop rates need to go. Even back in the Void days, nothing was below 5%. Hell, back in the Void days, I remember the community was pissed every time a new Prime was released and one part was sitting at 5%. I have no idea where that outrage went, but it needs to come back. The user later edited their post saying, I'm going to clarify myself because I see debates about mod drops and etc. below. Rotation rewards items off boss enemies, that type of stuff should never dip below 5%. I'm fine with mods and resources keeping their current drop rates because you have many tries to get that stuff to drop. However, I also think frequency of the try should factor in. 5% Stalker ephemera? Eat my ass. That needs to be buffed higher. Same for stuff from the wolf. Another user saying, I wish DE uses bad luck protection or achievement-based rewards more, especially for things like ephemera or 1.5% drops. Looking at you, Zyphos, and half the Laddo and Bratton Vandal parts of rotation B and C, giving bad luck protection, so say, the drop chance increases over each run you don't get it until 90 runs, and you are guaranteed to get the item, would do a decent amount to curb how terrible some of the grind feels. Another, I have mixed feelings. On one hand, low drop rates are bullshit and I want my stuff now. It sucks that it took me 11 weeks to get the Sledge, and I'm very lucky I got the mask at only 20 runs. It sucks that you can get bad luck and have to farm this dickhead 120 times and still not get everything. DE being unclear on his status during the majority of the Nightwave didn't help, since you had people, including me, getting pretty worried he'd disappear and never be seen again. If it weren't for the tactical alert, I wouldn't have either the Sledge or the mask. On the other hand, it turns out the Wolf is sticking around as an assassin, will have beacons, and now has a temporary farmable source, though it is at the very end of the Nightwave, which is lame. He's also gotten easier over time, and he's not that bad of a fight where he is right now. You will also be able to get the Sledge and his mask after the Nightwave, though it may take a while. Though I don't think the drop rate itself is the problem, you can have a less than 1% drop rate of an item if the enemy is common and easy to find, and it'll be fine. A 2% drop rate is actually pretty generous compared to a lot of other rates. The problem is that he's not a trivial fight and you only have a short window to fight him reliably, so it's very easy to get burnt out. Another, drop chance should be proportional to the amount of time you'd expect a player to perform a specific action and enjoy it. I'm perfectly fine with a 0.1% drop chance from something like an Elite Grineer Lancer because I've killed thousands of them and I'll kill thousands more. It's a secondary bonus. It doesn't push me in a specific direction. But a 2% drop chance from a single boss in a single mission means DE actually expects players to farm that boss for 10 to 30 hours, which is unnecessary. A game can reward commitment or effort, though usually it's just a wasted time countdown, but should never reward suffering. And to end the community coverage of this video, we go to the final post. As a past WoW veteran, I am used to 0.10% to 1% rare mount drop rates from dungeons you could only run once per day. To many, partly me included, the lucky drop is the accomplishment. While others take pride in having a special mount from an achievement only the top 5% of skilled players can earn, just as many take pride in a mount only 5% of the player base was lucky enough to get to drop. I guess it's worth noting that WoW has a huge community of people who just want to collect rare shit, which Warframe doesn't have because you can just buy the vanity stuff, and most other things are just normally earned. I use enjoy it loosely, because where there is a certain level of joy in running old content, hoping to get something cool, and getting it, it's preceded by no shortage of irritation or possibly even misery. I have been that guy who was so happy to suddenly get a rare mount without trying, and it would make my entire week, but also be that guy who runs the same shit for months or even years and get nothing. I'm only comparing WoW mounts and the Wolf mask here because they're basically the same thing. Cosmetic rewards that don't actually matter, and only exist as bonus goodies that you probably shouldn't actually farm for the sake of your own sanity. WoW has had similar problems with drop rates for actual important loot, much like the old players' woes of 5% prime part drops, but WoW actually overhauled their loot system in multiple ways, because so many players were getting dicked over by bad percentages or ninja looters or whatever. Players have a lot more freedom in how they acquire what they want, but there are still many rare things with less than 5% rates because people like getting lucky against intimidating odds. I will admit I love how rare the mask is, but there is little reason for the Wolf Sledge to be as difficult to obtain as it was. I don't know how long the Nightwave thing was going on, but I've only had my hammer for a couple of weeks, and many were less lucky. Now that we're talking about drop rates, I think Despair Hunters have something to say. 5.53% drop rate, and I can't remember the last time I've seen it drop out of the hundreds of times I've killed him over the years. I only sell blueprints in bulk, so spare despairs go under my radar. But I have two, and part of my wonders if I have only seen it drop 3 total times in the past 5 years. That's almost certainly not the case, but it really feels like that. Returning back to me for a second, as for my experience with the wolf farming, I spent around 4 hours farming it, and along the lines of, if there was no tactical alert and DE expected people to get it normally, with the wolf's already low appearance counts, what the fuck? 2% is just way too low. And as an editor's note, I just want to add that I still think it's bullshit, even in Nightwave Series 2, where we now have the Wolf Beacon to summon him at any point, but I've also voiced my opinions on the Wolf Beacon, specifically it being tied to the offering store, and it having a Nightwave cred cost. I think it should be tied to Barricadier like the rest of the assassin-based enemies, and since it's not, we have to resort to the offering store. If you do want to know my full opinions about that, I have a video up on the channel about it. I will leave it alongside all the other sources for this video, but that's for another video. That is not Nightwave Series 1. To end the data and information collection stage of this history video, Series 2 did not launch straight after Series 1. As stated earlier, Series 1 ended on the 19th of May, and access to the offering store and the Nightwave menu went into limbo. It was removed from the screen, you could not access them. It did spark community discussion and outrage, but there was no way to acquire items like Vauban, Direct Nightane without grinding for the very low drop chance from sabotage missions, and other items from the store. While there was no Nightwave or Nightwave store for a number of weeks, eventually DE did release something called Intermission. This was a period in time between Nightwave Series 1 and 2 to fill the void while DE worked on Series 2 content. Eventually that did end and we had Series 2, which is ongoing as of recording this video. Now Intermission did have 15 ranks, there was no prestige mode, and the store did return. But we are getting very long, this is part 2. And that may be another Warframe history video for another time completely. Or I just may not do it. Because I'm about to share my thoughts on Nightwave as I wrote them at the time of making this script, which was back after Nightwave Series 1 ended, which was in May, and I'm recording the audio for this in September. So let's share my thoughts at the time for Nightwave Series 1. I have not read it, I have not edited it, so if it does not sound right in context to Nightwave Series 2, what the hell? Let's get into it. If you want my thoughts on Nightwave in general, this image on screen is something I made on the 27th of April, and it sums it up perfectly. I was all for Nightwave in the beginning. It was new and it definitely gave me direction as a veteran, but golly gosh did that fade away as the weeks went on. The fear of missing out or FOMO was severe, and while most challenges were simple, basic, and could be completed while doing something else, others were absurd. Especially when Nightwave is a replacement for the alert system, which was accessible to all players so long as they had unlocked the planet node. And it had also rewarded players for doing pretty simple stuff, and it was fair to both veterans and new players. For me, I hold the same feelings about Nightwave to the feelings I hold to Relics. Maybe that's just old manisms and burnout speaking, but at this point, I honestly believe Nightwave should have been running alongside alerts, and that DE's focus on adding extra grind and currency to keep players playing failed, at least for me. In reply to one of my followers on Twitter, I said if I didn't want to cover the game and make YouTube videos, I think I would be in the same boat as you, or in one of those BRB Warframe for 6-month phases. For context, my follower shared his Nightwave rank at the time, which was 18, and that buried debts completely killed any desire he had left to play the game, and that he had been alt-F4ing the game on login rewards since. For me, burnout was on max with Series 1, and as of writing this script, Intermission is currently running, and I just don't care anymore. Maybe you do too, maybe you don't, but I have limited interest in the future of Nightwave and its replacement style for alerts. In regards to actual acts, something that I find absurd is the fact we have to use Forma to get Forma, and that we have to guild a weapon, which means making a custom gun or melee weapon, for content that has been out for months and years in regards to the Plains of Eidolon and or Valis. Some of us have already gone through all this content. It has been out for a sufficient time for players to go through all of it at a reasonable point. So why are we being required to build another modular weapon or polarize a weapon to complete an act? The way it should be is using the items we've already made and already polarized to complete the act. So instead of use Forma or build a weapon, it should be use a polarized weapon to get 500 kills, 150 kills, or use a modular weapon to get 500 or 150 kills. That's the way it should be, and I feel like this little push to the market isn't respecting players. Now, as an editor's note, so we're going to True Me in September, DE in Series 2 did remove the Guilding Challenge from Nightwave Series 2, so thank you DE for doing that, especially after hearing the community's concerns from Series 1, Intermission, and then Series 2. Now if we could get on that former act, that'd be great. If that's gone, I'm pretty solid with how Nightwave Series 2 acts have been running. But anyway, that's Nightwave Series 2. We go back to my script with Nightwave Series 1. So to continue. When it comes to the Wolf, I would like to see Nightwave bosses get their own finite boss node, because we don't need more RNG dependent assassins, and to be frank, I don't believe Warframe needs them in the state that it's in. Now I do understand with DE's workload and the way the lore was worked around the Wolf of Saturn 6 with him hunting us, even though there wasn't really any incentive for him to do so, I understand that. But let me picture the following for you that in my opinion would be awesome. The Wolf returns to the Saturn 6 prison, and then we fight him in the courtyard. Simple as that. DE doesn't need to make this giant tile set, even though that would be awesome, because in that case we would get a look into an aspect of Grineer society that we haven't known about, and possibly DE could expand their lore outside of 3 major characters and, I don't know, the cinematic scenes and voiceover for awesome lore every 6 months. I don't know, we need more lore, basically. Anyway, I think that would be awesome, fighting the wolf in the courtyard. That way it's no longer just a Captura scene and we have a finite location to farm the wolf so that his drops make sense and, as a post throughout the video said, respectful of players' time. All I ask for future challenges is that they make use of the items we already have, or that we will eventually have, instead of making us do it all over again for no gain, outside of standing. Because the rewards we get from the Nightwave tiers ends up being the rewards we wasted to get that tier. Now that's it. If you watched all of it, let me know, and please share your criticisms and general comments about Nightwave Series 1 in the comments, especially about the wolf, since this is part 2 focusing on the wolf. But yeah, that's the return of Warframe history. If you liked it, let me know. If you watched all the way up to this point, let me know as well. Definitely be interesting to see if you got through all those very critical and responsive comments about the Wolf of Saturn 6. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.